Good morning. Today I will be teaching you leukemia and lymphoma. The definition of leukemia is that leukemia is a condition in which there is clonal proliferation of malignant stem cells in the bone marrow. So a clone of cells become malignant and there is uh, proliferation of these malignant stem cells in the bone marrow. Leukemia is present when more than 25% of the blast cells are present in the bone marrow aspirate. Acute leukemia. This is a malignant clonal proliferation of white cell precursors or blast cells which occupy and inhibit the function of bone marrow, and they may circulate in the blood and form leukemic deposits in any tissue. So basically these are acute leukemia is the clonal proliferation of white cell precursors which are blast cells, and they inhibit the normal function of the marrow and may circulate in the blood and may form leukemic deposits in any tissue. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia or ALL accounts for about 75% of the childhood acute leukemia. Malignant or blood cell morphology resembles the primitive precursors of the lymphoid cells. Acute myeloid leukemia, AML, it accounts for 25% of the childhood acute leukemia. And malignant or blood cells morphologically resemble myeloid precursors. Etiology of leukemia. What is the factor which predispose to childhood leukemia? Uh, Genetic conditions are there: Down syndrome, Fanconi anemia, Bloom syndrome, uh, and Diamond-Blackfan anemia, Shakman-Diamond syndrome, Osman syndrome, neurofibromatosis type 1, ataxia telangiectasia, severe combined immune deficiency, and paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria. In all these genetic conditions, there is a high chance of getting acute leukemia. Now, the environmental factors important are the ionizing radiation, drugs and benzene exposure, and alkylating agents. The pathophysiology. The precise molecular events that cause leukemic and transformations are unknown, and there is relentless proliferation of immature hematopoietic cells that have lost their capacity to differentiate normally. The development of leukemia may be a multi-step process, as in many cases acute leukemia may develop in patients with pre-existing myelodysplastic disorders. The disease is monoclonal, that is, the leukemic events occur in a single cell, and this single cell then start proliferating and causing leukemia. The level of differentiation at which the malignancy becomes evident is variable. In some cases of acute myeloid leukemia, it appears that malignancy occurs in a very undifferentiated cell similar to the normal hemopoietic stem cells, and red cell, platelets, myeloid precursors are all involved in the malignant clone. ये बात सुने? In other cases of acute myeloid leukemia, the malignant event may occur in a more differentiated cells, and only granulocyte and monocyte precursors develop from the malignant cell, while red cell and platelet precursors are not involved. So, if the more the primitive cell, there is more chances of getting more than 2 or 3 cell lines to be affected. In almost all cases of ALL or acute lymphoblastic leukemia, the malignant event occurs in a cell that is at least partially differentiated as a malignant clone. बात सुने, ये पता नहीं लग रहा कितने स्टूडेंट्स आ गए हैं क्या है. मेरी आवाज़ जा रही है उधर? हैं? वो कैसे पता लगेगा मेरी आवाज़ उधर जा रही? ठीक है, ठीक है. Okay, in some and in other cases of acute myeloid leukemia, the malignant event may occur in a more differentiated cell and only granulocyte and monocyte precursors develop from the malignant cell, while red cells and platelets are precursors are not involved. In almost all cases of ALL or acute lymphoblastic leukemia, the malignant events occur in a cell that is at least partially differentiated. As the malignant clone expands, it does so at the expense of the normal hematopoiesis. In many patients with hypercellular marrow, pancytopenia is probably the result of physical replacement of the normal marrow precursor by the leukemic cells. So, due to increased proliferation of these leukemic cells, they replace the normal bone marrow, and so the normal bone marrow cannot make cells, so there is pancytopenia, and the bone marrow is almost all replaced by leukemic cells. Now, how do we classify? This can be acute leukemia can be classified in a variety of ways: morphology, cell surface markers, cytoplasmic markers, and cytogenetics. According to morphology, there is one classification, FAB classification for ALL. In this, there are three cell types: L1, L2, and 3. In the L1, the cells are small, uniformly blast, nucleoli are small and indistinct, and cytoplasm is scanty. In L2 morphology, cells are large, variable in size. One or more large nucleoli are present and cytoplasm is abundant. In L3 cells, in L3 morphology, cells are large, regular in size and oval or round in shape, and there is one prominent nucleolus, and the cytoplasm is abundant, deeply basophilic, containing vacuoles. I am just showing you the picture. You can see in the picture the upper one, this is L1 morphology. You can see this is small cell. There is scanty cytoplasm and size is uniform, and nucleus is round, and there is small nucleolus. In L2 morphology, this is a large blast cell which is irregular in size. There is more cytoplasm, and the nucleus shape is also irregular, and there is prominent nucleolus. In L3 morphology, there is large blast cell, uniform in size. There is abundant cytoplasm. Vacuoles are present in the cytoplasm, and the nucleus is round, and there is prominent nucleolus. So, according to this classification, L1 morphology has a better prognosis than L2 and L3 morphology. And this is the blood picture of ALL. You can see many blast cells which are all having very premature shape and nucleus. Now the classification according to the cell surface markers, monoclonal antibodies which are reactive with the cell surface antigens, they are used to classify acute leukemia. So there are T cell markers, common markers, and B cell markers. In the T cell markers, CD2, CD3, CD5, and CD7 are the surface markers. In the common, CD10 is important. It is a common ALL antigen. In the B cell markers, CD14, 13, 14, 33, and 34 are the surface cell markers. Number 3 classification is according to the cytoplasmic markers. One important cytoplasmic marker is CDT. It is terminal deoxynucleotide transferase, a marker that is not found in the normal mature myeloid or lymphoid cells. So, according to this, also the leukemia, acute leukemia is classified. The fourth one is the cytogenetics. In some cases of acute leukemia, there is numerical or structural chromosomal abnormalities within the leukemic cell population. For example, there may be translocation, deletion, or inversion, and between 15 to 20% of the um, platelets of ALL have Philadelphia chromosome. Clinical manifestation. Peak age of onset is 3 to 5 years and it is most common in the boys. Onset of disease is usually insidious. It takes about 4 to 8 weeks to present. It commonly presents with anemia, infection, and hemorrhage. Clinical features. Unexplained anemia may be the sole clinical abnormality at presentation. There is progressive pallor, weakness, irritability, and tiredness. Anemia may be from the disturbed erythropoiesis, hemorrhage, or hypersplenism, and later may be due to cytotoxic drugs. Then the patient may have fever, mouth ulceration, and gingivitis, and septicemia may arise during pancytopenic phase of during without warning. Purpura and ecchymosis are common along with epistaxis, gum bleeding, and hemorrhage into the gut from thrombocytopenia. Retinal hemorrhages, which are round with pale center, may occur from leukemic infiltration of the blood vessel, causing vascular blockade and thrombocytopenia. I remember my one patient when I was working house job in medicine. That patient had leukemia, but he went to eye department that his visibility or visual acuity was deteriorating. When they checked his fundus, there were retinal hemorrhages. So they referred the patient to us and we investigated and he was found to be having acute lymphoblastic leukemia. So the presentation can be in very various ways. Cervical glands are enlarged and painless but may be tender secondary to oral infection. These, as well as occipital, axillary, and inguinal groups, are typically discrete, painless, and rubbery on palpation. Hilar lymphadenopathy seen on X-ray of the chest. Then there may be anterior mediastinal mass, which is characteristic of the T-cell leukemia. It is also seen in the chest X-ray. Spleen is enlarged usually. It is smooth and firm in 80% of the cases and tender if the splenic infarction or trauma occurs. Liver is enlarged and there may be ovarian or testicular leukemic involvement. Orbital swelling with proptosis may be present with acute myeloblastic leukemia. Bone pain thought to result from leukemic infiltration of the periosteum or expansion of the medullary cavity are a common complaint, particularly in children with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Leukemic cells may infiltrate the leptomeninges, causing leukemic meningitis, and signs of leukemic meningitis are headache and nausea, CNS policies, CNS nerve policies, and seizures may develop. And deposition of leukemic cells in organs or body cavities can lead to disturbances of the organ functions like superior vena cava obstruction, pleural or ascitic effusion, cardiac, tamponade, renal, hepatic, or splenic infiltration. So this was the all clinical features of acute lymphoblastic leukemia. On examination, many patients have anemia, although only about 25% have hemoglobin level below 6 grams per deciliter. Most patients also have thrombocytopenia, but as many as 25% have platelets count greater than 1 lakh per cubic millimeter. About 20% have the WBC count greater than 50,000 per cubic millimeter, and about 50% have WBC counts less than 10,000%. So in leukemia, Even the WBC count can be low. So it is also called leukemic leukemia. The diagnosis of leukemia is suggested by the presence of blast cells on the peripheral blood smear, but it is confirmed by the examination of the bone marrow, which is usually completely replaced by leukemic lymphoblast. If the virus cannot be aspirated or the specimen is hypocellular, bone marrow biopsy is required. Sorry, it is not the virus. If the bone marrow cannot be aspirated or the specimen is hypocellular, then bone marrow trephined biopsy is required. In the trephined biopsy, we take a piece of bone along with the bone marrow. So bone marrow is replaced by all with the blast cells, and in the blood smear also there are blast cells, and the examination of bone marrow is diagnostic, showing all replacement of the bone marrow with leukemic blast cells. Now, other investigation chest radiograph is necessary to determine whether there is a mediastinal mass or tracheal compression secondary to lymphadenopathy. CSF should be examined for leukemic cells. CNS leukemia is defined as a CSF white cell count more than 5 micro per microliter with blast apparent on cytocentrifuge specimen. Now, what is the differential diagnosis of acute leukemia? Number one is aplastic anemia. It presents with anemia, infections, and bleeding. There is no lymphadenopathy or hepatosplenomegaly. There is pancytopenia in peripheral blood, and bone marrow is hypocellular with decreased number of the blast cells. The other one are myelodysplasia and hypocellular leukemia. Leukemia reaction to infections such as TB and pertussis can lead to increased number of lymphocytes in the peripheral blood. Even more than 50,000 cells may be present. But this is self-limiting. After the treatment of the underlying disease, this leukemia reaction subsides. Other differential is infection mononucleosis. A high index of suspicion is needed to differentiate acute lymphoblastic leukemia from infectious mononucleosis in patients with acute onset of fever and lymphadenopathy. Juvenile idiopathic arthritis in patients with fever, bone pain, but often no tenderness and no joint pain, swelling. And idiopathic thrombocytopenic purpura, there is only the thrombocytopenia, but hemoglobin, etc., is normal. Lymphoma, tumor of the lymphatic system presenting with massive lymphadenopathy invade into the peripheral blood is not present, and lymph node biopsy is diagnosed. ALL must be differentiated from AML and other malignant diseases that invade the bone marrow like neuroblastoma, rhabdomyosarcoma, Ewing's sarcoma, and retinoblastoma. So these were all the differential diagnosis for ALL. Also, the last is the local infection like tonsillitis, tooth sepsis, and sinusitis can lead to regional lymphadenopathy. Now, how are we going to manage a case of acute lymphoblastic leukemia? Without effective treatment, the disease is fatal. So we must treat the patient. Survival is related to the age and the subtypes of the leukemia. This directed therapy has become the standard of current ALL treatment. Now, there some patients are standard risk and some patients are high risk. What are the standard risks? Standard risk patients are when the age is between 1 to 10 years and the leukocyte count is less than 50,000 per microliter. These are the standard risks. Age between 1 to 10 years and leukocyte count less than 50,000. But the high risk patients are those children who are younger than 1 year or older than 10 years of age and who have an initial leukocyte count more than 50,000 per microliter. These are the high risk. So the prognosis depend upon the standard risk or high risk. In the high risk, the prognosis is not good. Additional characteristics that adversely affect outcome include T cell immunophenotype or a slow response to the initial therapy. The T cell immunophenotype is also very resistant to treatment, have poor prognosis, and if there is poor response to initial therapy, then this is also a high risk patient. A patient who are having chromosomal abnormalities including hypodiploidy, Philadelphia chromosome, they are also having poorer outcome. The more favorable factors include rapid response to the therapy, hyperdiploidy, and trisomy of specific chromosomes like 4, 10, and 17. These are the more favorable factors, hyperdiploidy and trisomy of specific chromosome 4, 10, and 17. Now there are many various stages of treatment or phases of treatment. Number 1, remission induction phase. Number 2, consolidation phase. Number 3, intensification phase. Number 4, maintenance phase. Number 5, bone marrow transplant. In some cases. Number 6, treatment of the relapse. And number 7 is a supportive treatment. Now the remission induction phase. Initial therapy is termed as remission and induction, and it is used to eradicate the leukemic cells from the bone marrow. During this phase, treatment is given for 4 weeks and consists of weekly injection of vincristine and a corticosteroid, dexamethasone or prednisolone, and a single dose of long-lasting pegylated asparaginase preparation. This is also weekly, and patient at higher risk also receive doxorubicin at weekly intervals. So there are almost 4 drugs: vincristine weekly, a corticosteroid, and a single dose of long-lasting pegylated asparaginase preparation. If in a high-risk patient, donorubicin is also added at weekly intervals. And with this treatment, 98% of the patients come in, they have remission. And what is remission? Remission is defined as less than 5% blast cells in the marrow and a return of the neutrophil and platelet counts to near normal levels after 4 to 5 weeks of treatment. So this is remission, which is defined as less than 5% of blast cells in the marrow and return of the neutrophil and platelet counts to near normal level after 4 to 5 weeks of induction treatment. Intrathecal chemotherapy is always given at the start of treatment and at least once more during induction. This was a remission treatment. Now consolidation phase. Consolidation phase, it focuses on intensive CNS therapy in combination with continued intensive systemic therapy. And this is aimed as an effort to prevent later CNS relapses. Intrathecal therapy is given repeatedly by lumbar punctures. Patients at high risk of CNS relapse may receive irradiation also to the brain in later phases of therapy. In the consolidation phase, the main focus is the CNS therapy with intensive systemic therapy and, if needed, irradiation to the CNS. In the intensification phase, this includes phases of aggressive treatment as well as relative non-toxic phases of treatment. The phases of aggressive treatments are called delayed intensification, and relatively non-toxic phases of treatment are called interim maintenance. Multi-agent chemotherapy is used during these phases to eradicate residual disease. These drugs which are used are cytarabine, methotrexate, asparaginase, and vincristine. So this was the intensification phase. Now the maintenance phase. This is the final phase of therapy which lasts for 2 to 3 years and the patients are given daily mercaptopurine and weekly oral methotrexate, duly with intermittent doses of vincristine and corticosteroids. Then the bone marrow transplantation. Some patients with poor prognostic features, such as those with induction failure or extreme hypodiploidy, may undergo bone marrow transplantation during the first division. Now the treatment of relapse. If after all the treatment the patient again having relapse, then we have to treat it again. The major problem during a successful outcome is relapse of the disease. The relapse occurs in bone marrow in 15 to 20% of the patients with ALL and carries a more serious outcome, especially if it occurs during or shortly after completion of therapy. And it occurs in 15 to 20% patients with ALL and carries a more serious outcome. Bone marrow relapse. This requires intensive chemotherapy with agents not previously used, followed by allogenic stem cell transplantation. In the CNS relapse, there are intrathecal medication, cranial or craniospinal irradiation, and systemic chemotherapy must be used because these patients are at high risk for subsequent bone marrow relapse. Testicular relapse occurs in less than 2% of boys with ALL. This usually occurs after completion of the therapy. There is painless swelling of one or both testes. The diagnosis can be confirmed by biopsy of the affected testes, and treatment includes systemic chemotherapy and local irradiation. Now the supportive therapy. Blood transfusions are needed, especially PAC RBCs for anemia and the platelet concentrates for thrombocytopenia and granulocyte concentrates for neutropenia. Antibiotics are needed for control of infection. Cotrimoxazole is recommended as a prophylaxis agent against Pneumocystis carinii pneumonia. Allopurinol in a dose of 10 mg per kg per day, three times a day, is given for 10 days along the induction therapy to guard against the development of uric acid nephropathy as a result of lysis of the leukemic cells, and this is called tumor lysis syndrome, in which there is increased level of uh, uh, phosphate and uric acid, etc. So for this we give allopurinol during the induction phase for 10 days, and we alkalinize the urine with sodium bicarbonate in a dose of 1 to 3 millimole per kg per day. Analgesics are prescribed as required because these patients are having severe bone pains. So they need analgesics. We have to give adequate fluid and nutritional support. Fluid must be 3 liters per meter square per day. We have to give the prophylaxis for malaria and live virus vaccines. They are all contraindicated. Contact with the patients of measles, chickenpox, etc. should be avoided, and hepatitis B vaccine must be given. These live virus vaccines also include polio vaccine. So these patients are not to be given polio vaccine. Remember that these patients should not be given polio vaccine. Psychological support of the patient and the family during the prolonged period of illness and its treatment is very, very important. And prognosis: without treatment, the disease is fatal within few weeks. But with the adequate treatment, about 50% of patients can achieve a prolonged remission more than 5 years and can be considered cured. Now, now the factors uh, which which have got poor prognosis. Poor prognostic factors are age less than 1 year or more than 10 years, a white blood cell count more than 100,000 per cubic millimeter, presence of a mediastinal mass on chest X-ray, usually this occurs in T-cell leukemia, CNS or testicular disease at presentation, massive hepatosplenomegaly more than 3 centimeter size, adenopathy, male patient, T or B cell disease, L2 or L3 morphology, deletion, translocation and hypodiploidy, no remission in 4 weeks of induction therapy, presence of Philadelphia chromosome in ALL, and if LDH is high. I repeat, age less than 1 year and more than 10 years. These are the poor prognostic factors. So age less than 1 year and or more than 10 years. WBC counts more than 1 lakh per cubic millimeter, presence of a mediastinal mass on the chest X-ray, CNS or testicular disease at presentation, massive hepatosplenomegaly, adenopathy, male patient, T or B disease, L2 and L3 morphology. I have already described you the L1, L2, L3 types. Deletions, translocations, and hypodiploidy in the chromosomes. And if after induction therapy there is no remission, or if there is Philadelphia chromosome present in the ALL, and if the LDH level is high, these are all poor prognostic factors. Now the factors which have got better prognosis or good prognosis are age between 1 and 10 years, white blood cell count under 1 lakh per cubic millimeter, there is lack of evidence of mediastinal mass, there is no CNS testicular disease at diagnosis, L1 morphology and common ALL, they have got good prognosis, hyperdiploidy or on chromosomal analysis shows good prognosis, adenopathy absent, hepatosplenomegaly absent or mild, less than 3 centimeter, LDH is not high, non-T and non-B ALL have good prognosis, rapid response to induction therapy, and female patient. I repeat again, the good prognostic factors are age between 1 to 10 years, white blood cell count under 1 lakh per cubic millimeter, lack of evidence of mediastinal mass, no CNS or testicular disease at presentation, L1 and common ALL morphology, hyperdiploidy on chromosomal analysis, adenopathy is absent and hepatosplenomegaly is mild or absent, LDH is not high and non-T and non-B cell type ALL has good prognosis, rapid response to induction therapy, and female patient. One important thing is tumor lysis syndrome. I will briefly tell you because this is a long subject. Tumor lysis syndrome is a constellation of metabolic disturbances and it may follow the initiation of cancer treatment and is seen within 48 to 72 hours of induction therapy. It usually occurs in patients with large and rapidly proliferating tumors. It is more common in acute leukemia than in high-grade non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Tumor lysis syndrome occurs when large numbers of neoplastic cells are rapidly killed, leading to release of intercellular ions and metabolic byproducts into the systemic circulation. Clinically, the syndrome is characterized by rapid development of hyperuricemia, hyperkalemia, hyperphosphatemia, hypocalcemia, and acute renal failure. So this is due to the rapidly proliferating tumor cells when they are lysed, they release of intercellular ions and many metabolic products into the systemic circulation which lead to rapid development of hyperuricemia, hyperkalemia, hyperphosphatemia, hypocalcemia, and acute renal failure. And malignant lymphoma, now I will tell you this, I have just finished acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Now we will study lymphomas. Lymphomas are malignant lymphomas are the third most common tumor in the childhood after leukemia and brain tumors. So leukemia number 1, brain tumor number 2, and lymphoma number 3. Lymphomas are broadly categorized into Hodgkin disease and non-Hodgkin lymphoma. So there are two types of lymphomas: Hodgkin disease or Hodgkin lymphoma, and non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Now, Hodgkin lymphoma. Hodgkin lymphoma, it is characterized by presence of B cell-derived Reed-Sternberg cells. I will just show you the Reed-Sternberg cell. Hodgkin lymphoma in children behaves similar to the disease in the adults. It is a malignant process involving the lymphoreticular system. Hodgkin lymphoma accounts for 6% of all the childhood cancers. It occurs in older children and has a slight female predominance. Infectious agents may be a cause such as human herpes virus, cytomegalovirus, Epstein-Barr virus. Infection with EB virus is related to fourfold higher risk of developing Hodgkin lymphoma. Now, what is the pathogenesis? Reed-Sternberg cell is a pathognomonic feature of the Hodgkin lymphoma. It is a large cell with multiple and multilobulated cells. It is also seen in infectious mononucleosis, non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and other conditions. And Hodgkin lymphoma is characterized by a variable number of Reed-Sternberg cells surrounded by an inflammatory infiltrate of lymphocyte plasma cells and eosinophils in different proportions. The interaction between the the Reed-Sternberg cell and inflammatory cells with cytokine release is main pathology in the development and progression of Hodgkin lymphoma. So there is interaction between the Reed-Sternberg cell and inflammatory cells, and there is the release of cytokines. This is the main pathology in the development of and progression of Hodgkin lymphoma. This picture is showing you the Reed-Sternberg cell. You can see in the center there is large nucleus and the irregular shape of the cell. Now the stages of Hodgkin lymphoma. There are four stages. Stage 1 is the stage 1 Hodgkin lymphoma. The cancer has only affected one lymph node region or organ. So only one lymph node region or organ is involved in stage 1. In stage 2, two or more lymph node regions are affected and the cancer is either above or below the diaphragm. So two or more lymph node regions are involved, but they are either present above or below the diaphragm. They are not present on both sides of the diaphragm. So this is stage 2. In the stage 3, the cancer may affect lymph nodes on both sides of the diaphragm. So in the stage 3, both sides of diaphragm, lymph node regions are involved. In the stage 4, the cancer cells have moved beyond the lymph system into the tissues or organs such as liver, lungs, and bones. So this is the metastatic spread of the malignant cells into liver, lungs, and bones. This is stage 4. What are the clinical features of Hodgkin lymphoma? There is painless, firm, localized lymphadenopathy, especially in the cervical region, and this one is the most common presenting symptom. There is usually some degree of mediastinal involvement. Clinically detectable hepatosplenomegaly is rare. So usually hepatosplenomegaly is not there. And systemic symptoms, which are called B, occur in up to 30% of the children. And what are these symptoms? Temperature exceeding 38 degrees centigrade, drenching night sweats, and weight loss in excess of 10% of the body weight within last 6 months. Symptoms and signs depend on the extent and location of the nodal and extranodal disease. Patients may present with symptoms and signs of airway obstruction if there is some mediastinal mass which is obstructing the trachea, Of bronchi, there is dyspnea, hypoxia, and cough. Pleural or pericardial affairs may occur. There may be hepatocellular dysfunction or bone marrow infiltration leading to anemia, neutropenia, and thrombocytopenia. Disease manifestations below the diaphragm are rare, 3% approximately. Diagnosis: how to diagnose a case of Hodgkin lymphoma? Of course, we have to evaluate by a detailed history and good physical examination, and then the imaging studies. We do the CBC and platelet count, ESR and serum ferritin, which are of some prognostic significance, are and serves as baseline to evaluate the effect of treatment. So we do ESR and ferritin level as baseline levels, and then we follow them for the to estimate the prognosis of the treatment. Chest X-ray is done for the measurement of mediastinal ratio, which shows the bulk of the disease and has prognostic significance. Chest CT scan, neck, chest, and abdomen is done. Chest CT more clearly defines the extent of the mediastinal mass. PET or positron emission tomography is useful for staging and classification of lymphoma. Excisional biopsy of the lymph node may be done. The diagnosis depends on the identification of Reed-Sternberg cell in tumor tissue. Bone marrow aspiration biopsy should be performed to rule out advanced disease. Bone marrow examination is performed in stage C4 or B symptoms. Liver function tests are done, renal parameters are done, and lactic hydrogenase level is also done. Now the treatment is determined largely by the disease stage, presence of the absence of B symptoms, and the presence of bulky nodal disease. So disease stage, presence of the B symptoms, and the presence of bulky nodal disease. So we give the combination for chemotherapy. Multi-agent chemotherapy is now the cornerstone of the treatment, and this is supplemented in selected cases by relatively low dose irradiation, and the majority of the children are treated with ABVD, meaning adriamycin, videomycin, vincristine, and dacarbazine, or COP, cyclophosphamide, vincristine or oncomin, procarbazine, and prednisolone. So ABVD and COPP, these are both used for treatment. And then there is BAVD. In this brentuximab vedotin, doxorubicin or adriamycin, vincristine, and dacarbazine are used. Multiple agents have different mechanism of action, and they have non-overlapping toxicities, so that full doses can be given to each patient. Radiotherapy is needed to in the involved nodes plus the next node group to which that could occur is often used to localize disease. So we have to do the radiotherapy for the involved lymph node as well as the next lymph node group which is around it. For patients treated with radiotherapy alone, chemotherapy can sometimes be useful as a successful therapy for relapse. Prognosis is good and varies from 90% cure of the stage 1 disease to 50% cure for stage 4 disease. Late effects of above treatments are secondary malignancies, thyroid gland dysfunction, growth disturbances after irradiation, and sterility. Now, the non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Non-Hodgkin lymphoma is a heterogeneous group of diseases characterized by neoplastic proliferation of immature lymphoid cells, which, unlike the malignant lymphoid cells of acute lymphoblastic leukemia, accumulate primarily outside the bone marrow. So here the malignant cells are accumulating outside the bone marrow, uh, but in the ALL, the malignant cells, they are present in the bone marrow. So this is the difference. Non-Hodgkin lymphoma comprise 6% of all the childhood cancers. Non-Hodgkin lymphoma accounts for approximately 60% of the lymphomas in children. They occur predominantly in older children and have a strong predilection for males. Childhood non-Hodgkin lymphoma differ for many adult cases in that they are uh, predominantly extranodal presentation, are likely to be T-cell lymphomas. They are highly aggressive and daily nodal histology. So this is the difference. They are childhood non-Hodgkin lymphoma. They have predominantly extranodal presentation. They are more likely to be T-cell lymphomas. They are highly aggressive and there is rarely nodal histology. One condition is Burkitt lymphoma. It presents as a mass in the jaw or abdomen. It has been linked to prior Epstein-Barr virus infection occurring in a young child who has been immunosuppressed by malaria or another infection. So this is uh, Burkitt lymphoma is linked to EB virus infection in a child who is immunocompromised. Clinical findings of, I will just show you the Burkitt lymphoma first. This is the slide showing you Burkitt lymphoma. There is almost homogeneous spread of the lymphoid cells. Clinical findings of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. All childhood non-Hodgkin lymphomas are rapidly growing and thus duration of symptoms is short. Anterior mediastinal masses, sometimes associated with pleural effusions, are the most common presentation of T cell and lymphoblastic lymphoma. They can produce respiratory distress with airway compromise and spina vena cava syndrome. Abdominal masses are the most common presentation of the B cell and non-lymphoblastic lymphoma. They can cause abdominal enlargement from rapidly growing tumors, sometimes producing pain, ascites, urinary tract or intestinal obstruction. Painless peripheral node enlargement can be seen with any type of childhood non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Less common presentations include obstructing nasopharyngeal tumor, bone marrow, or skin tumor. Um, Now, various systems are employed to different for different types of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. They all distinguish. One is local disease of limited bulk, which is confined to one side of diaphragm and carries a good prognosis. The other is the extensive disease within the mediastinum or abdomen. And the third one is hematogenesis dissemination, especially to the bone marrow and meninges. So the prognosis depends on all these three. Diagnosis of non-Hodgkin lymphoma, we have to do the bleed blood cell count and platelets, serum electrolytes, uric acid, lactic dehydrogenase is done, renal parameters are done, chest X-ray and CT scan chest is done, and then neck, chest, abdominal, and pelvic CT scan, head CT for suspicion of Shingles disease, and PET scan are done. Abdominal and pelvic ultrasound are done. Bone scan, bone marrow aspiration, and biopsy, and CSF cytology is done. So now management of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Lymphoblastic non-Hodgkin lymphoma is treated as that of acute lymphoblastic leukemia. So the treatment of lymphoblastic non-Hodgkin lymphoma is as of the ALL or acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Systemic chemotherapy is needed in all cases to shrink the local tumor and to prevent dissemination in the bone marrow or to leukemic phase. Intensity and duration of therapy depends on the type and stage of lymphoma. CNS prophylaxis in some form is required in most patients. Radiotherapy is indicated in treatment site where there is life-threatening obstruction like trachea, bronchi, spina vena cava. that does not respond to chemotherapy and or a bulk tumor for which chemotherapy load is not adequate. So in these conditions, the radiotherapy is needed. Complications: non-Hodgkin lymphoma, complications of multi-agent therapy leading to serious mucositis infections, cytopenias that require RBC and blood products, electrolyte imbalances, and poor nutrition. And these are the side effects of chemotherapy. Other long-term effects are growth retardation, cardiac toxicity, gonadal toxicity, with infertility and secondary malignancy. Prognosis: with appropriate management of the metabolic consequences of red cell turnover and with institution of rapid cell turnover and with institution of therapy, prognosis is excellent. Without therapy, rapid and widespread dissemination occurs. Patients with localized disease have a 90 to 100% chance of survival, and those with advanced disease have a 70 to 95% chance of survival. Thank you.